Hello friends, today I am going to dive in and answer the question, can land contracts be broken? If you've ever dealt with land contracts, you know that they can be tricky, but can a land contract be broken? Well, by the end of this video, you'll know various ways to legally exit a land contract, whether you're a buyer struggling to keep up with the monthly payments or a seller facing an uncooperative buyer. When it comes to land contracts, there are certain things that you must understand whether you're a buyer or a seller. Questions that will no doubt inevitably rise up. And one of those that's going to come up, and maybe you've asked yourself this question before, but can a land contract legally be broken? And what might those consequences be if it is? Are you curious about the rights and responsibilities of each party if it does go wrong? Well, stay tuned as I break it all down, as I first dive into the components that make up a land contract. I will then explain why and when a land contract should be used. And finally, I will break down how a land contract can legally be broken by both the buyer and the seller. If you're ready, let's go. A land contract is a legal agreement for a seller-financed purchase that doesn't involve financing from a bank or any other traditional financing means. Instead, the buyer is going to make monthly periodic payments to the seller until those payments are made in full. At that point, they legally own the property. So now that we have the definition of a land contract, let's dive into the components of a land contract. Number one is price. Obviously, there's going to be an agreed upon price between the buyer and the seller. There's going to be the interest rate that the buyer is going to pay. And typically, because it's seller finance, that interest rate is going to be higher than a traditional mortgage. A down payment is also negotiated in these terms and a component of a land contract. And many times, a down payment is much less through a land contract than a traditional real estate purchase and sales agreement. The monthly or periodic payment is a component of a land contract. The amount due and the due date of the balloon payment, if such one exists. Sometimes a land contract is a monthly payment for 30 years and it's amortized over that period of time, or it might be a 30-year amortization over 30 years, but a balloon payment at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, depending on what you agree upon between buyer and seller. And a balloon payment essentially is just a due date of the remaining balance of the loan at a certain date down the road. That gives you, the buyer, an opportunity and plenty of time to be able to refinance with the bank using traditional financing. The loan term is also an obvious component of a land contract. Something called equitable title, which is important for the buyer, meaning that the seller cannot sell this property to a third party or get liens against the property. Also a component inside the land contract, and this is basically understood, but who is responsible for taxes, insurance, maintenance and repairs, and utilities. And many times that is the buyer. That is what a land contract is utilized for, because it allows the seller to act like a landlord with none of the landlord responsibilities, like paying those items I just mentioned. A default clause is also a bonus to have as a component in a land contract. A requirement to record the land contract with the proper government agency. And finally, a component that's really important in a land contract are assurances to make sure there's no liens or taxes owed on the property when you engage in a land contract between buyer and seller. So why and when should a land contract be utilized? Typically from the buyer's side, a land contract is a good thing when that buyer does not have enough credit history, or maybe some negative things that have impacted their credit in the past, whether it's a short sale, foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, they've missed payments, or they don't have enough money to put down as a down payment. This becomes a great option because through a land contract, you can avoid a lot of those things and not have that weighing on you like you would with traditional financing. And for buyers, it becomes an alternative for you to be able to buy a home even when you don't qualify for traditional financing. And as I mentioned, for those individuals who maybe have not saved enough money, or they're just getting started, getting into home ownership where they do not have enough money for a down payment, this is a fantastic option. So what strategy in real estate would you utilize a land contract? The one that I've seen that's most prevalent and that I use very often is something called a slow flip strategy. A slow flip strategy is just this. I am looking in the Midwest for homes that are below $70,000 that I can get between 25 to 35% asking price or market value. And I am buying that home outright with cash, but it's a home that I'm looking that has very few repairs needed done. It's move-in ready, and I'm borrowing that money from a private money lender at 8 to 10%. And I've got a few investors that are doing that. And why would they be willing to do that? Well, number one, their money is backed by a piece of real estate, and a piece of real estate that I've got under contract that is 25 to 35% below market value. Now, why would a seller be willing to sell a home, 25 to 35% below market value? Well, Usually I'm having to place quite a bit of offers to even get that accepted. So about 1 out of every 10 or 15 offers is going to be accepted on that. And there might be some negotiating back and forth, but ultimately I want to get it at a very low price. And I am paying cash and I'm closing in 30 or 45 days. So it is a solution to them to get money as quick as they can out of their property. Once I have the property, I have it under contract and I plan to close, I am then going out and looking for somebody that I can sell the property to, utilizing a land contract as a seller financing option. So that individual or that buyer does not have to get traditional financing. They can own the home, they take possession of the home, and they are probably going to pay a little bit higher interest rate, but many times aren't required for a down payment or any type of credit check or credit history that many times they need to get done. Plus, a land contract can be executed really quickly. So a slow flip is a great strategy. And to finish out how that strategy works is I am financing from my private money lender like it was a car. So I want him paid back in 5 to 7 years. So that's going to be amortized over 5 to 7 years, whereas I'm amortizing it for this buyer for 30 years. And because I'm charging a higher interest rate and a higher purchase price of the property, that money coming in from the buyer, that monthly payment is going to make the payment to the private money lender. And when it's paid off in 5 to 7 years, I have nothing but pure profit coming in from the individual in a land contract. And that's why a land contract can be really good, especially as a seller, because if you are a seller and you have a land contract, it gives you all the power. For example, if the buyer defaults and stops making payments, you as the landlord can then evict the individual from the property without going through the foreclosure process. And we all know a foreclosure process can be extremely difficult, expensive, and time consuming. So the benefits of a land contract, especially in a slow flip, is you have all the rights of a landlord without the responsibilities, right? So you're not responsible for the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the repairs, the utilities. But if they don't make payments, you can evict them and you keep all of the money they paid to you up to that point. So knowing all of this, the biggest question that comes out, can a land contract be broken? And the simple answer is yes, a land contract can be broken. And the seller can take action if the buyer breaches the contract. And one of the first ways is something called forfeiture. The seller can file a court action called land contract forfeiture if the buyer defaults on the contract. This means that the buyer gives up all the money that they paid to the seller up to that point, and the seller still keeps the property. Another way is called acceleration. The seller can call the balance due on the entire property if the buyer misses a payment. And the final way to break a land contract is termination. If the contract has been in place for less than 5 years or less than 20% of the payments that have been made, the seller can terminate the contract and retake possession of the property. So what about the buyer's side? Yes, a buyer can break a land contract, but it is much more difficult than the seller side. Number one, and the easiest way to do this, is to have in that contract some contingency periods. Buyer can often walk away from the contract and keep their earnest money if there's a period of time, whether that's before you take possession of the property or maybe 6 months into the property, to make sure that there's no false claims that were made or misleading information that the seller had regarding the property. So when you get in there, if all of a sudden you find out that the foundation's bad, there might be a contingency period that you can negotiate into that land contract that allows you to walk away with no restrictions whatsoever. A contract breach is another way. This is if the seller has breached the contract. That could be through misleading information or fraudulent claims. And one final way, and all of these probably involve some good real estate attorney at some point, but if there are major property issues, if you as the buyer going into this property and you were never told about some major issues that happened and you find those out, that gives you the right that the seller has breached the contract and might allow you to break that land contract. But once again, all of this, I recommend having a good real estate attorney that understands land contracts. So in conclusion, a land contract is definitely in favor of a seller, but a buyer is able to break that land contract through those few means that I talked about, but they are few and far between. If you are a seller and you are looking to seller finance a home, the best and most utilized tool to do so is a land contract. These are things that I've seen on how you break a land contract from the buyer and seller side, but I'd be interested in your feedback. What are some benefits or negatives of land contracts? So please comment below. Let's engage in conversation. And as always, I have a free gift for you. It is a short-term rental calculator where you put in the price of the home, the income, the expenses, and the software will actually spit out to you whether it is a good deal or not. It's 100% free, no obligations. Just click on the link below, aaronsfreetraining.com. Thanks for stopping by. Have an amazing day.